Welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically, the podcast that talks about the good, bad, ugly, and awesome. Careers, life transitions, confidence, and everything in between. Because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone.
Hello, and welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically. My name is Jessica Cumming, and today I am joined by Dawn Butler. She is a technical program manager and cybersecurity leader with over 20 years of experience in IT governance, process improvement, and stakeholder engagement. With a foundation in software engineering, cybersecurity, and operations management, she is known for bridging the gap between technology and people, driving innovation through collaboration, adaptability, and strategic problem solving. Dawn, welcome to the show.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm typically on the other side of the microphone because I'm a podcaster too. So this is good. Let's see what we come up with.
I know it's definitely different when
Right?
you're on the other side of it on
Yeah.
podcasts. So, that's a great place to start. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your podcast?
So my podcast, I like to call it a mentorship podcast and bringing mentorship directly to the listeners. I started the podcast because I had been seeing sort of through the social streets, I call it internet streets, a lot of people were asking for mentors. And they were getting different types of feedback. And the feedback wasn't wrong. There was a lot of people who said, don't just go to a person and say, can you be my mentor? It needs to be organic and whatever. But what I saw was a gap, a need, and understanding that really there's probably more mentees than there are mentors. And I reflected on my own personal experience from my career and how I didn't get enough mentorship, whether that was on my part or the part of the fact that there just weren't enough out there. That's just what it was. And the blessing at that point, when I had this sort of eureka moment, was that I had mentors. For the first time, I felt like I really had a nice cadre of mentors that I could talk to. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be so cool if how I can talk to my mentors and ask questions, I could do that for other people? And podcasts was how it would happen. It's like, talk to people who are in the profession, who've been doing it for a long time. They have all these lessons learned and just bring it to the people. That was how I started. And it's evolved over time, but that's the basic mission, to bring that mentorship directly to people, to show them the possibilities in a technology career or as a technologist in the profession. If they don't have a mentor, they can just press play, right? And get mentorship right to their ears.
What is the number one lesson that you have learned since you started podcasting?
It's a good question. I think for me, when I started the podcast, I said to you that I was like, what if I talk to mentors and have them tell their story, their lessons? The biggest lesson for me on the podcast is like, well, you want to have a podcast. And if you don't know about podcasting, everybody, the saying goes is that you need consistency. And that means you have to publish on schedule because your audience is expecting you to be there. And I had set a goal at the beginning to publish bi-weekly every 2 weeks. Because I sat and I thought, what's reasonable for me? Like a SMART goal, like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, right? And I said, honestly, realistically, I can't do it more than every 2 weeks. And I did that. And as I went along, I didn't always have a guest every 2 weeks. And so it was just like, oh, I'm going to have to do solo episodes. Oh my God, what am I going to say? Right. And so the biggest lesson for me has been really digging in, like going on in the inside and finding the courage to talk, to share my own lessons. Right. And so kudos to every podcast guest. You know what I mean? Who comes on, and it does take courage to come and share from within yourself those lessons learned. And so I think that's been the biggest lesson. I've been finding and using my own voice more. That's been the biggest thing for me. Is that a lesson, Jessica, or is that like a revelation or something?
We'll just call
I
it
don't
all
know.
of the above. But it's interesting because that leads me to the number one thing that I can think of is vulnerability. Now,
Yeah.
we are in a world where, you know, vulnerability is key. And we're in a world where people don't trust one another. They don't trust what they're saying. They don't trust what they're doing. And so
Yeah. It's true.
kudos to you for
Hmm.
digging deep and sharing your stories. Cause I can tell you, I went through the same thing in my first season. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I tried, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that it was just surface level. And you can't, right? A lot of times we want to separate our personal from our professional lives.
Absolutely.
But now that you're doing
Yes.
this, you realize that one always impacts the other. Whatever happens in your personal life
Yes.
impacts your
Yes.
professional life. How have you seen some of your personal life impact you starting the podcast or what you're doing now?
There is this book, a virtual friend, because we've never met in person, but we met virtually through LinkedIn, and she and I just talk. We do WhatsApp. She recommended I read it, called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And it's a little quirky, but it has such great lessons for women and embracing all of our, what she calls the wild woman, and being who you are. And she talked about how a lot of the things that we find mission in, cause, come from our horrible experiences, or she said the rage. Now, I don't know that I'm raging or I have raged. You know what I mean? But when I heard her say that, I was like, absolutely. I started that podcast. I never wanted to be a podcaster. Now, I interestingly found a note from a friend from many years ago that she said something like I should have a podcast. And I wasn't interested. It's like, no. But a few years back, I did a vision board for the first time. I used to try to do vision board parties and I could never finish my vision. It was the weirdest thing. I could never finish the vision board. And I realized at that moment that the reason I had a hard time with the vision board was that I had a hard time dreaming. When life throws you a lot of curveballs, a lot of unexpected things, sometimes it impacts your ability to dream. Or when you've dreamt a dream and it didn't come true, you feel like maybe you shouldn't dream because then you won't be disappointed. That's just human, right? And so somehow, once I recognized that blockage, I guess you could call it, I was able to dream. And interestingly enough, I put this little section on this electronic vision board podcast. I don't know why I did it. I just did it. Because in my head, it wasn't anything for now, it was in the future. And a year or so later, I had a podcast. And it's just like, wow, how did this happen? And so the podcast came from my own experiences. Like I said, realizing that I lacked mentorship and wondering like what would my life have been, my career, if I'd had it. And I've even questioned like, was that me? Was I not look available for mentorship? Did I not look for it? Maybe I should have read more books. We do this stuff, because we want to try to figure out like
Yeah.
what happened in the past. And I have to tell myself, it's in the past. What are you going to do with the future? And so a part of that experience for me is I want to give that to other people if they can't find it locally. Because sometimes you look up and around and you just don't see anyone. And I think that happened to me a lot. I just rarely saw anyone who I wanted to sit in their presence, Jessica, and hear from them. It was just the truth. I remember in my younger years, there was one lady. I remember I heard her speak or something. She didn't say a lot. And I was like, ooh, now there's someone I wouldn't mind sitting and learning from. But those were few and far between for me. And so I think for the podcast, I like the fact that I try to bring various voices, various career experiences, so that maybe you don't find the mentor tips or whatever in one person, but you could find it next week or the week after. And so in that way, that personal experience is what drives me. I really want to give to the people that are coming up, what I think I did not have.
You are creating the legacy that you want to leave behind, one podcast guest at a time.
Yes. Jessica. Those solo
I
episodes.
understand.
It has not
No,
gotten
I
easier.
understand. It's interesting because I never thought that I would want a podcast either. And our backgrounds are similar in the fact that we both have about 20 years
Hmm.
in tech. And I was told it was probably about a year before I did my podcast episode. I had people tell me you should do a podcast. I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about? And they're like, well, I don't know.
Right.
So you're telling me I should have a podcast and you can't tell me what I should be talking about. What makes you think that I'm cut out for this?
So they saw something. And I think a lot of times people see things in us that we don't see. I've recently had people tell me I should be a teacher. Just out like, you should really think about teaching. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, But when it keeps coming at you, I think that's when you have to pause and be like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something they see. But I want to touch on something,
Yeah.
Jessica, if you don't mind. You mentioned like earlier the separation that we
Hmm.
try to have, right, between personal life and work. And I think for us, where we are, for age and experience, you end up recognizing, well, you did it, but it may not have been
Yeah.
the best thing. You did it, you may not have done it as successfully as you thought, right? It's like you're here trying to separate this stuff, but you can't break
No.
yourself apart. And when you do that, I think that's what creates the burnout, trying to separate. And I think podcasting and doing the work we do, it does require that other part that we try to put aside, to
Mhm.
get the work done. Because in a way, the profession is not an easy one. And so sometimes it felt like there was no
Mm.
room for feeling, right? There was no room for, I don't feel great today. Let me just pause and, figure out what that's about. It's like, no, you got to keep on going, the next deadline, the next production cycle, or whatever it is. So I think for me, if I could give again something to the women who are coming behind us, is to find a way to blend that. Don't leave those pieces of yourself. I want to give them a little bit of credit. I think they know that. I don't know if we knew that, like that I was even
Yeah.
okay. I think for them, the authenticity and all this stuff is like, it might be buzzwordy, but I think they're doing that
Mhm.
well. Yeah, a
Yes.
lot better.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I do look at my professional time in corporate, and I remember people saying to me at one point when I did start to share some of the personal side and things I enjoy doing, people are like, "Wait, what? I never had any idea." And I thought
Right.
about it. I'm like, well, yeah, I didn't front the information, but you, you didn't ask
Yep.
either. And when you are
Yeah.
in a male-dominated industry, there's just this stigma about what women do in their free time. And, that it's just not going to be anything appealing or exciting or interesting. But I want to circle back on, if you don't mind, and let's talk about
Hmm.
vision boarding because so unbeknownst to you, I hosted a vision board workshop this past weekend. Oh,
My gosh.
so y-
Oh my gosh.
yes, whole timing since we met has been absolutely crazy.
Always. Always.
But I hosted a vision board workshop and we did it at a wine bar. And it was a phenomenal time. It was a lot of fun, got to laugh. And there were some women that walked in that they have never created a vision board before. They had never even attempted one. Said that you
Hmm.
had tried, but you were never able to finish them. Now
Yep.
you're finishing them, you are living it. Tell me, how would you explain the experience to someone of why vision boards
Mm.
are something that they should get on board with, pun intended?
I know, right? I can tell you who inspired me to do it. I used to host a virtual session called Miracle Moments, and I started during the pandemic because even with all of the pain that we were going through in the pandemic, it just didn't look really good. I was having this privilege, I call it a privilege, to be exposed to people whose lives, miraculous things were happening in them. So people are dying, we're wondering what's going to happen. Our lives are in a wreck and we don't know. And still these things were happening. And so I was like, I feel like people need to see this. Like they need to know that this, like, despite all of this stuff, these beautiful, miraculous things are still happening in people's lives. It's like hope. And I did that for about 3 years. I think maybe in the second year, I talked to someone who I only know on social media through like virtual groups. I traveled a lot and she's a travel person. Her name is Lauren and she's the outdoorsy diva. And I had Lauren come on. It wasn't a podcast. It was just a virtual gathering. And I don't want to talk about what it took for me to do that. Like I had to push through so many barriers and maybe it led me to podcasting today. I don't even know. It's a process. Anyways, and Lauren shared with us how she had written down her vision. And though it had taken years, these things were starting to happen. So basically, it's like what we were seeing as these miraculous moments were these things that she had wanted, that it decided to do from years before, right? Whether she heard God say she should do it. It was very faith-based. And she decided to say yes to it, even though it felt scary and whatever. And she took action, not always knowing where the actions would take her, but that's how she was where she was. And it was just so inspiring for me. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I need a vision board because I want certain things for my life. But like I said, I had also sat with the fact that I had tried vision boarding in the past and I just could never finish the board. And that's when I had the recognition that I was afraid to dream. And so I sat down and I sort of surrendered that reality for myself. And the things that I dreamt from as a little girl started coming back. Like I remembered that I wanted to have an indoor pool in my house. I'd forgotten about it completely. And I was like, oh, I used to want an indoor pool because I like to swim. And living in the colder part of the country, I was like, shoot, if I have my druthers, right? If I could have my dream, I'm going to have a nice house and I'm going to have this indoor pool so that I don't have to worry about the elements. Lauren was my inspiration, like having her story, her vulnerability, she was vulnerable. And part of her story was also a little traumatic as well. I don't want to share it. It's her story. But that's what inspired me. And so I guess for those women, I don't know how to say it, Jessica. It's like one of the things I think that for me that helps me is the recognition. Like when I realized, oh, this is what's holding me back. It's almost like once you get to that point, it opens up the door, the windows, or whatever. And it sort of releases what's being held up inside. For those women, I think those moments of reflection, those moments of sitting with yourself. I literally just prayed about that this morning. I was just like, I need some more reflective moments because life is just going to like, I've only done that one. I haven't done another one since. I don't know why, but I just haven't. But I've had moments when I've gone back to that vision board and I was like, oh, it happened. And I didn't even know it happened. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you don't recognize it's happening.
Yeah.
Because I didn't necessarily do anything. It's a good like vision, but it's also a nice reminder, like, of where your accomplishments and where you're going and stuff like that.
When we were doing the workshop this weekend, one of the things that I told the ladies is don't just put the end goal.
That's
Put
nice.
the steps on there that it takes in order to achieve that goal. You want to run a marathon? You need a picture of the shoes that you're lacing up. You need a picture of you walking out the door.
That.
You don't just, you don't just want the corner office, right?
Oh, yeah, because it's going to take some steps to get there.
But you need to envision yourself with the confidence of having that first conversation of what is it going to take to get there.
Yeah.
So, I'm a huge believer in vision boards. I know that Oprah is a huge believer in them. Serena Williams, Steve Harvey. I mean, this is not just a girl's thing, but definitely something that I've done for a long time. So the fact that this part of the conversation came up, I know, just like all of our conversations, right? They never go where we think they're going. Go.
Can I
Of
extract a little
course.
something from what you said that I think our listener
Mhm.
should understand? You said that you were surprised that some of those women had not
Yeah.
done a vision board. Now, I'll be surprised too, because I just thought everyone
Yeah.
knew what they were. And I wanted to extract that because sometimes when we're dreaming our own dreams or we have our own visions or thoughts about things, I know for me, I think, oh, surely something know about that. This is like, what's the point of doing that again? But there's probably someone out there who's
Mhm.
never done it. And the fact that you can facilitate that and walk them through it is what they need. I just think that's
Yeah.
amazing, Jessica. That's a lesson I just took from you, by the
Well,
way.
I'm definitely glad that I could help out with that. And, I'm going to be doing these in
Yeah.
the Austin area over the next few months. I've already had a couple of people reach out to me and say they want to do private parties with them.
Oh,
So bookstores, wine
nice.
bars. So that was not supposed to be a plug for them, but it's really amazing because even if you've done a vision board in the past, it's something where I tell women, even if you just sit down and give yourself an hour and you do this,
Yeah.
spend that time with yourself because I heard you say that you hadn't allowed yourself to dream or you had stopped dreaming. Because if you don't dream,
Mhm.
you don't get
Yeah.
disappointed. But if you
Yeah.
don't dream, you can't achieve. Yeah,
You don't get the
exactly.
dream.
Exactly.
Our human nature is so protective of itself, right? It's like what is it, the amygdala and the nerve, it wants to protect you from all of those things that hurt
Yeah.
you. But it also can be paralyzing and stop you from achieving. I've had to almost like rehearse that thought process or concept a lot. When you have, like you said, even in the small steps that you take to get to the big dream, sometimes you still have to take a pause and be like, okay, what is stopping me from the first step? Because it's those little steps to get you where you're going. But if you don't make that one step and the next step, right? And a lot of times there's a fear of the next step not working the way you think it should, right? And so that's why I love how you said to them, it's about the process too. It's like if you can just make each step its own maybe dream or like I don't know, mini dream or something like that. And then two, sort of divorcing ourselves from outcomes as we expect them. I can't remember who I heard talk about that once. Just because something didn't turn out the way you thought it should doesn't mean it can't teach you something. Doesn't mean that it can't show you another way to get to that place. I know for me, obviously I deal with disappointment and stuff a lot because like I said, I have to rehearse that like, okay, just because it didn't work doesn't mean your whole goal
Yeah.
is invalid. You know what I mean? Some of us are like, I forget what they call that. My therapist said dichotomous or something like that. It's like either or. It's like, it's not. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's a middle, they call us black and white people or stuff like that. So yeah, those rehearsing moments, like, okay, it worked for this. I can apply it to this too, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Looking at really the science behind it is interesting because your brain,
Hmm.
you choose what to feed it. So when you're looking at your neural pathways, what you feed it is what you get more of. So if you feed it negative,
Yes.
you're going to get
Yes.
more negative.
Yep.
You choose to feed it
Yeah.
positive, you're going to see more positive.
Whew, why are you all up in my stuff, Jessica? I'm gonna let you finish what you have to say, and I'm gonna tell you something.
Then based on what you feed your brain, you literally start to rewire your pathway. And if you do it
Yeah.
consistently, small steps, you can start to rewire your neural pathways in as little as 21 days.
So yeah, they say what 21 days to make a habit
Yep.
or break a
Yeah.
habit. Yeah, I tend to when I'm trying to do something like that, I do put myself on a 21-day something. But I just want you. I wanted to let you say that. I wanted to mention this morning in my prayer time. I'm a person of faith, and when we started the not recording, but we got on here to talk, I said to Jessica, I had a rough week. And I didn't tell you why. But what happened was this morning I sat down and I said, okay, I had a rough week. What was that about? And I recognized that I was being impacted by external narratives about the job market and different things like that. And if I were to label myself according to a personality, I tend to be more of a realist pessimist, not an optimist. And so a huge work that's being done in my life is this rewiring of my brain, I guess, in a way. And it's just like, well, are you going to think about the things that are true, right? That's what people are saying. But what does your faith dictate to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to focus on the negatives and all of the news? Or are you going to believe that there's greater for you? And it's like we were saying, I had to sit there this morning and say, wait a minute, what do I believe? I'm subject to being what's happening in this world, but I have to believe that there's something more for me. I may not know what that looks like. So vision, I
Hmm.
guess, in a way, and then that's when I had that thought about having these reflective moments. It's like, I need to spend more time in reflection. Like maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, quarterly, something where instead of having all of this negativity hit me, I spend more time thinking about all the great
Yeah.
things that happened. You know what I mean? So I guess in a way, rewiring. But, when you have that sort of glass half full versus glass
Yep.
half empty, I guess I'm a glass half
Yep.
empty person. It does require a consistent, like you got to catch yourself. I was like, wait a minute. Oh my gosh. And it threw me for a complete loop. These things that people were saying to me, you know what I mean? And no wonder I had a rough week. I was like, what happened? Oh, you listened to all that they had to say. What about what you really believe, you
Yeah.
know?
I have to say, what you just said honestly shocks me. Like, I don't see you as a glass half empty person. I don't see
Yep.
you as a pessimist. I don't see any of that.
Yep.
It's interesting because I think a lot of women, we get to the point where it's hard work to make a change. And
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to just say, I'll do it later
Yeah.
versus
Mm-hmm.
deal with it or face it head on. So kudos to you for doing that because I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier. There are days where it's like, oh, I don't want to do this today. But we have to get up. We have to continuously keep moving, right?
Absolutely.
And I know it's the same in the corporate world. I can't tell you how many bad days I was like, I don't want to do this today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of want to go ahead and shift our conversation just a little bit, if you don't mind, because I know that you
Yeah.
were in corporate for nearly 20 years. Can you just tell me a little bit of your background?
My story is evolving
I love that.
because this is the moment in time when I've actually sat and looked back at my story. When I was in my story, I didn't do a lot of that. It's hard to say, but I was in survival mode for a lot of my career. Now, when I say survival, I don't mean like I was being abused or hurt or whatever. I was in survival from a perspective of my childhood, like how I grew up. I had a really good childhood, but my childhood included moments when we were in need, didn't have, right? I know what it's like to come home and the
Mm.
electricity is off and because we couldn't afford to pay the bill. I know what it's like to I don't know if Jessica or some of the people on the listening might know. You run out of toothpaste in the toothpaste tube and you cut it open and you stick the brush in there to get toothpaste. I know what that's like. I was blessed to have a full scholarship to go to college.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah, for
huge blessing.
sure.
Worked really hard to maintain that. Got an engineering degree that was not easy to get. I did it in 4 years. People typically took 4.5 to 5. And so that was a big deal. But I came out of college, I had no job. I'm an immigrant, so that's a part of it. And one of the very first job offers I got was with a defense contractor.
Wow.
They were like, hey, Dawn, we want to offer you this job. A condition is you and your family have to be citizens. And I was just like, well, I'm not even a
Yeah.
citizen. I look back, Jessica, and I realize what a different trajectory my life might have been on if I could have
Mm.
taken that job. So at the time, my younger brother had come to Maryland. I lived in Maryland back then. I've moved, and he was starting his life. He was going to school. And so in a way, I was supporting him. And there we were a few months in, depending on parents, for the bills and things. And that wasn't easy. And I was like, I need a job. I don't want to have to. And I'm from the Bahamas. So this was in the 90s. We didn't have the easy ways to move money around like we
Right.
have them now. And so I was like, I need a job. And a friend of mine, God bless him, he was like, my job is hiring. Are you interested? I was like, yeah, I need a job, you know? And it was a programming job, like coding, software. And remember now, I said I did an electrical engineering degree. So I only had taken 2 programming classes in school. I don't know what I said to those people that are in that interview. I must have done a really good job because they hired me. And I look back now and I realize that was a
Mm.
survival decision. I didn't have the luxury of, oh, I can wait around for the job that
Yeah.
I love. That was survival. I had to pay bills. My brother was there. I felt responsible for him in a way. You know what I mean? And so looking back, I think the majority of my career, that's where I've been. And that's
Mhm.
personally. Okay. Now, I have been extremely blessed to have a intellect and intelligence that enabled me to pivot in my career. Like I started off as software. I ended up doing database administration. I was a production support manager. I ended up moving into cybersecurity and doing program management. But yet, a lot of that was survival. I got to keep working. A lot of us
Mhm.
are like that. I don't know if this is where you
Well,
intended me to go,
we're going
Jessica.
wherever.
You asked the
Yeah,
question.
I'm asking the question, and you lead me down the path.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at the stuff in hindsight. I wasn't thinking about that. I just was doing what needed to be done. And I think that's where my dreamer died in a way.
And you were young then too,
It was
right?
just
I mean,
like, yeah, I was in
yeah.
my early
So
20s.
looking back, and you're already not allowing yourself to dream.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I didn't feel bereft of anything at the time. My goal was to have the money to pay the bills. And so, in a way, that was my dream. I sort of shifted my dream. I think I mentioned the book
Mhm.
Women That Run with the Wolves. In that book, she says that women have so many moments in our lives when our lives take a different path than we expected, or these little pieces of us die. And we have to sit with those. And I think the reason I can tell you this now is because I've been doing that recently. I've been sitting with those like, that was a trajectory
Yeah.
change for me. But at the time, it was like, I need a job. Let's just keep going. I didn't get that defense contractor job. Just keep going. I call it survival mode. I'm probably calling it the wrong word, Jessica. I don't know. But to me, it's sort of like a survival. It didn't give me room to think. And so I have this beautiful luxury that I've been given getting laid off last year. That has allowed me to do all of the stuff I'm talking to you about, like sit and really look at my life and my story. And I also read this book called Life is in the Transitions. And he talks about how our narratives shift when we get these big changes. And this that I'm in right now is one of those. It's tough. It's not easy. I mentioned how I had a rough day, but at the same time, I am so grateful. I don't want to cry because I really, really am so grateful to have this time. We talked about it, Jessica, those pauses, those reflection moments. to adjust and to say, oh, I lived my life a certain way. I don't want to live it that way anymore. How can I create a new life for myself? So it's a juxtaposition. It's a weird, weird place. And you've had one. We talked about it when you were on my
Yep, I
podcast,
was just
right?
thinking that. I
The
know
mo
exactly what you're talking about.
like this unexpected tragedy that also reveals this beautiful, if you can not be the glass half empty girl, right? The pessimist. So I will be very honest and say that at the beginning of this period, I had a lot of those moments where God said to me, what are you going to believe? Like, are you going to sit in all the negativity? Are you going to believe there's something greater that's out there? Are you going to sit and wallow in what's happened? I did. I had my moments and I still have them. I just want to be clear. I still have them. They don't last as long as they used to. But it's just like, no, this is happening in my life for a reason, right? And one of the huge things that I've gotten from this moment without realizing it when I started was my
Yeah.
podcast. It's given me mission, it's given me meaning that I didn't have previously because I was in survival mode before. So it was all about me, me, me. How can I? And not in a selfish way, but in a like, I have to survive. I don't want to come home and be like, the light switch.
Yeah.
What happened? You know
No,
what I
I
mean? So yeah, I don't know.
no, I
Go
definitely know
ahead.
what you mean. And you had mentioned it earlier that so many women are in survival mode. And right now, the job market, the way that it's been, the economy in general, the way that it has
Yes.
been, there are
Yep.
so many women that are
So many.
they're doing whatever they need to do. They're working the hours that they need to. I saw a lady that
Yep.
that posted on Facebook the other day. She said, "How many hours do you guys typically work?" I'm looking at least 60 hours a week. Is that the new norm? Thought
Wow.
as I look back when I was doing that. E-
Oh yeah. You know, we talked about that.
Yep.
We've both done that.
And I just thought we are allowing that to become the new norm. You know,
Yeah. It's
it is for
faced.
sure. And so I have a
Yeah.
question for as you're looking back and going through all of this survival mode, just picking a job and just doing what needs to be done, not dreaming. What would you tell the younger version of you now that you know?
Ah, that's a good question. I've written stories like, you know how they have you like write letters to your younger self? I've done that in the past. I don't remember what I said to myself, but I think I would tell her that, yeah, you're doing what you have to do, but you can still dream. Again, I was this dichotomy,
Yeah.
like no in
Yeah.
between. You know what I mean? It's like you're in survival, you better survive. Remember now, everyone, I said this is in retrospect. I didn't know
Right.
that's what I was doing. If anyone looked at me, they would be like, "Oh, you have a great career. You drive a nice car, you have a nice home." I had my first home at 22. Like I was
Yeah.
living the dream, right? And I think if I had known, if what I could tell her was, this is all good, but what do you really, really want? Take some time to figure out what you really, really want. And honestly, I don't even know when I stopped doing it, but I just did. I had a lot of other things happen in my life that I haven't covered on in this conversation that I know impacted that as well. But when I started to really dream again a little, I've done it in spurts. One of the first things I did when I reconnected with myself in a way was I started thinking about all the things I used to want to do. So like I always wanted to whitewater raft. Don't know why, but I always did.
You and I are not the
I
same.
went whitewater rafting
Yeah.
in my
You and I are not
40s.
the same.
I'm actually a pretty adventurous person, and I didn't realize that until like recently, like the last 10 years. But I grew up with boys. I'm an only girl. So I grew up in that sort of rambunctious, like we did stuff like, but I'm still girly, right? And so I don't know, somehow that stuff just sort of sat on the back burner. And so I went whitewater rafting. I went skydiving. Like I did tandem skydiving because I'd always wanted to skydive. And people were like, "Are you having a midlife crisis?" I was like, "No, it's a midlife rediscovery." Because it's like I had put all of these things on the back burner. I don't know why I didn't think there was room for those. So that would be what I would say to her. There's room for the other stuff.
I'm going to go deep here because I just love everything that you said, and I love the rediscovery portion of it. But you said just a few minutes ago, there's been a lot of other things that we haven't talked about yet in this podcast.
Yep.
Let's talk about them. What are,
Huh?
if you're willing to go there, let's help the women
Yeah.
out that are listening today.
Okay, so I got married pretty young, around the same time that all these great things, like I got that first job. I think I got married maybe a year later. Remember I mentioned that book, Life is in the
Mhm.
Transitions? He said that our lives are always having these disruptors. And it resonated with me because during the pandemic, I had read an article about micro grief. And it sort of also attaches to the women that cries with wolves, descansos. So we're always having these things happen to us in our lives, right? Some of them shake us, some of them we just keep walking through. And so I got married, and I remember I said to you, I'm
Mhm.
an immigrant. Well, I didn't do everything I should have for my status. So when we got married in the Bahamas, the US didn't allow me to come back. So we were separated for a few months, not very long. But I look back now and that was a little disruptor.
Mhm.
In any case, our marriage didn't work. I ended up getting divorced. And that was a huge disappointment for me. Huge. Like probably one of the major disappointments of my life because we were both people of faith. And I thought that that would be the magic wand.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like we both believe the same things. Like this is just you
Yep.
fairy tale. And it didn't work. So when I started doing the descansos, that the author of that book taught that was one of the things I wrote. How disappointing that was for me. That threw me for a huge loop for about 3 years. But I was still surviving. Then I got remarried. And that didn't last either. Now, I will say that one didn't throw me for as a big of a loop as the first one. I sort of I was like, it was sort of like, okay, you've done this before. You went through the huge loop. No, this is not going to happen again. You know what I mean? Do the work on yourself. Because that's when I started really reassessing, like, okay, what is it? Is there something about me? Right. But I started to understand the importance of like, who am I? What am I about? What do I believe? That was really when I started dreaming again, like rediscovering myself. Like, okay, I've had these and by the way, in the middle of all of this, I had moved countries,
Okay.
switched jobs. So I was doing all of these little but big changes through all of it. And so that's why I said that's a little bit of stuff I taught. That's just a tip of the iceberg for all the
Mm.
changes. I moved back home to the Bahamas at one point, I did it because I missed my family. And then I was just like, okay, I need to move back to the States because there's no work. I look back and I can see how a lot of some changes that I volunteered myself for, right? That didn't necessarily work the way I thought they would because we always have
Mhm.
expectations, is where my disappointments came from. And it's like, don't take risk, then you won't be disappointed. But what a dull life that is. And I'm grateful because I could have gotten stuck. And I honestly don't know what my life would have been like if I gotten stuck and not realized, like, I have to dream again. Who am I? Like, there's this woman inside of me that's been like sort of under the
Mhm.
surface. And working in a male dominated field didn't help that either at all. Because in a way, it was like you had to, sort of tamping down that woman to survive that as well, right? So yeah, just a cacophony of circumstances that I sit with now and I'm like, okay, God, you must have something really amazing for my future. Because surely this story has to be for something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
Not
I hope
for
I answered your
sure,
question there.
100%. You couldn't see yourself staying stuck. I'm going to be honest. And I mean, I don't think this comes as a shock. There's a lot of women that are stuck, that stay stuck. They stay where they're at for the status, they stay where they're at for the kids, right?
Oh yeah.
They stay
Yeah.
stuck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If you could tell them anything, what would it be?
I had a friend who was grappling with whether they should separate from their spouse. And I said to them, I'm going to tell you what, if you leave, it's going to be hard. If you stay, it's going to be hard too. That is just the
It is.
truth of it. Are there moments when I look back and wonder, should I have stayed? Yes, absolutely. Because it ain't easy being single out here. You know what I mean? And, but I thought about this the other day. My first marriage, we would have been married for 30 years if I had stayed. And honestly, Jessica, I was just like, I think I would have lost my mind. I don't think I would be anywhere near the person you see today. Absolutely not. And so then I have to be like, it was hard. It wasn't easy. I went through a lot. But I think if I had stayed, I would have been worse off. No, I know I would have been because the emotional roller coaster that I was on, I don't think I would have been able to even maintain the career that I had in that situation. And so, yeah, I'm going to just say to her, it is not an easy road to walk. Because again, look, from the outside looking in, when I moved home to the Bahamas, I had a really good job. I could see the ocean from my house. Like I had from the outside looking in. But on the inside, mm-mm. And so I want to have this life where I feel so good on the inside and the outside looks really good too. You know what I mean? Yeah, I like that. And so it does take work. So the things like me sitting down this morning and recognizing, like, why have I been having such a rough time these past few days? And realizing it's because you let all these things other people had to say impact what you think about yourself and your circumstances. And while those things are true, like in general, that doesn't mean they are
Yeah.
accurate for you, right? Work. It takes work. But in the end, I could have people like Jessica say to me, I'm shocked. You're a pessimist?
Yeah, that was not on my bingo card. I'm just going to say it does take work and it is scary. You think that your life is on one trajectory, and then all of a sudden there's a curveball
Yes.
that's thrown in there.
Yep.
And we also look at how we attach ourselves to certain things, and we don't want to lose them. We're afraid of what other
Oh,
people are going
yeah.
to say. We attach ourselves to other people's
Yep.
opinions. And I think about how many times, because we attach ourselves to, like you said, right, this week, you had some rough times because they were other people's thoughts or other people's influences. How
Yeah.
many times did we lose ourselves because we allow people to take those pieces away? I'm glad that you sat down with yourself and thought, hey, this isn't me. This may be other people, but it's not me. A bad day doesn't have to be a bad week. A bad week doesn't have to be a bad month.
Right. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I definitely,
Yeah.
because I can relate. We all can.
That's
And,
real.
we talked about the fact that both of us have been laid off. I like to call it my divorce from corporate because, that's really what it was. It's what catapulted me to where I'm at now. But, with everything happening in the economy and the job market, we are seeing, record numbers of layoffs and things like that.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you did in order to really keep yourself grounded and positive as possible when you were going through your layoff?
This is why I need those reflective moments. Because then I mean, I've journaled a good bit, but I don't think I spent enough time like going over them. So maybe that's one of the things I did a lot. I think when I first found out, I had so many emotions. One of the very first things that I had to rectify in my mind was it's okay to have multiple emotions. It's like I had a sense of relief, but I was also sad.
Mhm.
I was in despair, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But I was also like, oh, the future can be what I make it. And I struggled the first few months with that. And I was like, it's okay. You can live in multiple planes. You don't have to be one. You can be all of that. Right. And so I think one of the things that I've really done in the last, since I've heard, so I got the news and been walking this journey, is that just being okay with
Mm.
the emotions. That's one of the biggest things. I went through a period of time, Jessica, where every Monday I had the hardest time waking up and like getting going. And when I say hard, I mean I felt it. It was heavy. And I was just like, what is this about? Like, what is this? And I wrote about it once at one point on LinkedIn because I was like, it's because of all the thoughts. Like, I put out that job application. Maybe I'll get the news this week, And so I think it's really been reconnecting with myself. That's one of the things that I find so valuable about having this time is I've been able to reconnect with
Mm.
me. Like to say to myself, wait a minute, for 2 days you've been spiraling. What the heck is that about? You were great on Monday. What happened? You know what I mean? And so I think that's been one of my major tools, I guess, if you will. I do try to spend once a day just sitting. I will I use voice notes now. I used to journal, paper journal before, but now I do the voice notes and I
Mhm.
just talk. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And that has helped me a lot because maybe it's because of the way my brain is wired. If I can talk myself through like what's happening, it's like, oh, well, that's what it is. I'm a solutions oriented person. And so in my career as well, I solved a lot of problems. So I find that the MO for myself is solve the problem. It's like, what's going on? What's caused that? And it's like, oh, it's because you blah, 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 blah. And then I can either I know the solution myself or I can look for a podcast or a book or whatever. So I've been doing a lot of reading, but I've been reading intentionally, about transitions, about change, because I'm going through one. And so that's helped me a whole lot.
Yeah. Transitions, we know that they are inevitable and we go through them all the time. It truly feels like sometimes in certain seasons that we go from one transition to another.
Absolutely.
But I want it.
If I used to cuss, I would say absa effing lutely.
I mean,
Do.
it's interesting. And, some transitions are good, some not so good.
Yes.
But it really truly is.
Yep.
Life is about just the transition period. I say this a lot that the only constant in life is change.
Absolutely.
But it's
It is.
how you perceive it, how you accept it, or how you take the information and move forward.
Mhm. Yep, I think that book that I mentioned, Life is in the Transitions, I listened to it on audio, but I'm going to buy it because the beauty of that book is it talks about these disruptors, how challenging it is to change, but it's the stories of the change. And one of the major things that stood out for me is that he, with all the people that he interviewed, because the book is based on this work that he did, this project, and he said on an average, a transition. So basically, like when you have a huge shakeup and it sort of shifts your identity or different things like that, like we're talking like major change, can take 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
Exactly. Exactly, Jessica. So when you think about navigating changes, right? Because you're still doing life, you're still moving around, doing the regular things. You may not be thinking about the change you're in the whole time. If we were to probably step back, we would realize it takes multiple years to like completely come into whatever that change is, right? Like how with my podcast, I can't believe I'm like ending up season 2. You are in season 3 of
Season
yours,
two.
right?
Season two. Same as you. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
season 2. Okay. And I'm just like, where did that happen? Where did it go? But it probably will take me another year or two to fully come into my own in that podcast. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like time. And so I want to say to women out there, if you're navigating a life change, whatever that might be, right? New job, loss of job, divorce, new marriage, children, empty nesting, give yourself grace for the change. I know for me, I've been like when I first found I was being laid off, my mother said to me, "I'm praying for you because one of your challenges is patience. Is you don't like to wait." I guess I wanted to just give them that comfort in a way to understand like again, when you hear these stories of the changes that people have made, it's sort of portrayed as they decided and then it happened. But the truth is they decided, like my friend Lauren I mentioned earlier with the vision board, it took her years to
Yeah.
walk that to where today she's outdoorsy diva and she's literally being featured in magazines and being sponsored to take people on trips. That took
Yeah.
years. Okay. I know that sounds like bad news, but it isn't. I'm watching a TV show right now that I'm loving. And I decided to go on like Google and find out about it. It was produced in like 2016, 2018, but they originally created that show 10 years before.
Yeah.
It finally got picked up. And I was just like, why am I sitting here? Woe is me. You ain't even been in this transition that long. There are folks, it takes them a long time for whatever that shift, that identity, that change, that to like, it's done. Here it is. Some people, they go through a huge change. If they lose a child, they start a trust or a foundation. We see the foundation today. It
Yeah.
took years. It's just not. But if you listen to all the influencers and all those people, they make it seem like, oh, just change your mind and just da da da, and then it'll happen. It's not real.
Thank you.
I just want to, remind everybody that it's okay that if it's been a year or 2 or 3, if you still walk in that journey, you're in the right place.
No, and
Yeah.
it's true because not everyone's journey is the same. What may take one person 1 year may take someone else 2 years. You don't know, to your point, what that person had to go through before. No two people are the same. No two people will have the
Not at
exact same
all.
path. And I think that it is very important
Yep.
because with influencers, because with social media, and I know I've said this a few times, but I'm going to say it again. We've become a world of instant gratification, right? Instant messaging. We expect everything right now. Our attention spans are going down. And so, yes, patience is something I have to laugh a little bit because that's something my grandma would always say is be patient. And, I remember at one point I looked at her and I was like, patience is a virtue I have not yet acquired.
So now I don't really pray for patience anymore. I really just pray for like the
Yes.
grace and the strength to walk the walk. And when I steep it in my self-awareness, I know
Mhm.
myself. I know it takes me a while, right? To get on board with the change. It's like, get on board, then maybe you can move through it faster, But then at the same time, figuring out not to always put myself on some arbitrary
Yeah.
timeline that I
Yeah.
created.
Mm.
Like, there's just so many factors in life and in the world. I go back to the podcast, how I said, oh, I'll have an interview podcast and it'll be every 2 weeks. Well, you
Yeah.
depend on other people. So you got to think about all of those factors when it comes to change and give yourself some love and some grace, and it's okay. You're doing a good job. Yeah, as long you're
Yeah.
walking, so you're
Yep.
doing good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just breathing, right? Dawn, for any of the listeners or watchers that want to look at connecting with you or learning more about you, your podcast, how can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Dawn Butler. Surprisingly, there is myself, right? We talked about how we like try to separate, and I was like, Dawn, you're who you are, just be that. And I have a podcast also called Bites, Spits, and Brilliance. You can find me on all of the platforms. Let's see. I think that's about it. I have a presence on Instagram and Facebook, but y'all, I'm not there. So find me on LinkedIn.
All right. For all of the listeners and watchers out there, if this resonated with you or if you know someone that needs to hear this message, please like, share it with a friend. Make sure that you subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you're looking for your own little reset, if you need just 10 minutes with yourself, I highly encourage you to download the Clarity in 10. And until next week, stay fierce, stay bold, but most importantly, stay unapologetically you.